College football's 2023 season doesn't start until August, but it's never too early to think about the upcoming year with an early top 25. I'm Stephen Lasson of All CFB 365. Let's take an early look at next year with the top 25 teams, as well as some teams that just missed our rankings who could work their way into the top 25 by the start of next season. Before we get into the top 25, I think it's important to take a second and think about what's ahead this offseason for college football. There's a second signing period, there's the transfer portal, potential coaching changes, coordinator moves. There's a lot more that's still to play out over the next couple months. So I think you'll see some of these teams not in the top 25 potentially work their way into the top 25 by later this offseason when spring rankings come out, and even in August right before the season starts. As we look at some of the teams that just missed our top 25, we'll start by highlighting Boise State. The Broncos are not our top-ranked Group of 5 team, but with quarterback Talon Green coming back next season, it wouldn't be a surprise to see the Broncos get back into the top 25 mix. Coastal Carolina returns quarterback Grayson McCall, but head coach Jamie Chadwell is now the head coach at Liberty. Duke is another team to watch next season. Head coach Mike Elko made a huge difference in his first year on the job. The Blue Devils improved from 3 wins to 9 wins. Bring back quarterback Riley Leonard. They could be a sleeper in the ACC. You also have Illinois and Iowa, 2 teams that were great on defense this year, but also have some holes to fill next year. Kentucky could be one of the most improved teams in the SEC with the addition of Devin Leary, the NC State transfer at quarterback. Miami is a team to watch in the second year under head coach Mario Cristobal. The Canes significantly underachieved with a 5-7 record in 2022, but there's a chance with better quarterback play that this team could get in the mix to be a top 25 team next year. You also have Mississippi State under new head coach Zach Arnett, and Will Rogers is back at quarterback next season. Texas A&M is a fascinating team to watch next year. The Aggies were one of the biggest disappointments of 2022 by finishing 5-7, but Jimbo Fisher made a good coordinator hire, and Bobby Petrino, we know roster talent is not an issue at Texas A&M, so there should be some improvement, but will that be enough to be a top 25 team next year? That remains to be seen. If you're looking for a sleeper in the Big 12, keep an eye on Texas Tech next year. The Red Raiders won their last 4 games in 2022. A few other teams to watch this offseason include UCLA. The Bruins are coming off their best season under coach Chip Kelly, finishing 9-4 this year. They do have to replace DTR and Zach Charbonnet on offense. And a couple Group of 5 teams, UTSA making the move from Conference USA to the American Athletic Conference. Also, quarterback Frank Harris is back next season. That's a huge move for the Roadrunners to potentially be a top 25 team. And Troy, the champions of the Sun Belt, finished in the top 25 this year after beating UTSA in a bowl game. The Trojans could be the team to beat in the Sun Belt next year. Now that we've looked at some of the teams just outside the top 25, as well as some teams to watch this offseason, let's get into our top 25 rankings, and we're going to start at number 25 with South Carolina. Putting South Carolina in the top 25 is really contingent on Spencer Rattler coming back at quarterback next season. He's considering an early jump to the NFL. South Carolina has easily exceeded preseason expectations in 2 years under head coach Shane Beamer, and if Rattler returns, the expectation level will be to finish in the top 25 once again. At number 24, we have Wisconsin under the direction of new head coach Luke Fickell. Also a bit of a scheme change coming for Wisconsin's offense. We know this group as a very run-first offense. Braylon Allen, the outstanding running back, is back next season. But Fickell hired Phil Longo, the North Carolina offensive coordinator, to call plays. Probably will be a bit of a shift in Wisconsin to throw the ball more. They brought in 2 transfers at quarterback, including Tanner Mordecai from SMU. You also have to figure that even though Wisconsin loses some pieces on defense, Luke Fickell has a track record of building good defenses from his time at Cincinnati, so I suspect the Badgers will be strong on defense, and they will try to be a little bit more explosive on offense to go with a good rushing attack. At 23 and 22, we have a pair of teams from the SEC. The Razorbacks of Arkansas check in at 23. At 22, it will be Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels. Arkansas returns arguably the SEC's best quarterback next season in KJ Jefferson. Rocket Sanders is also slated to return at running back. But the big question for Arkansas will be patching up a defense that really struggled in 2022, especially against the pass. If you look at Ole Miss, a little bit of a similar situation. Quarterback Jackson Dart returns, and Quinshad Judkins was one of the top freshmen in college football this season. He's back at running back, but Ole Miss has big-time question marks on defense. Scoring points will not be a problem for the Rebels, but the defense has to improve if this team wants to make some noise in the SEC West. A pair of Big 12 teams takes the next two spots in our very early top 25 for 2023, and that is Oklahoma at 21. Brent Venables in his first season, a disappointing 6-7 mark. But some injuries, roster turnover hindered this team. There's optimism that this program should bounce back in 2023, especially with Dylan Gabriel returning at quarterback, plus a year for this defense to get more acclimated with the scheme. Kansas State at 20. Deuce Vaughn is off to the NFL, but Will Howard returns at quarterback. You also have to think that Kansas State will once again be solid on defense. So the defending Big 12 champs check in at number 20 in our way too early rankings, but we also can't count out Coach Chris Kleiman's group from easily exceeding our expectations next fall. At 19, we have North Carolina, and this is really about one thing. The Tar Heels have one of the top quarterbacks in college football in Drake May. Some of the pieces around him are changing, including Josh Downs at receiver, who's off to the NFL, but the Tar Heels have dipped into the transfer portal for help. The defense, a lot of pieces back in the front seven, but there's no doubt about it, this group has to get a lot better for Coach Mack Brown's team to challenge for the ACC title next year. At 18, we have the defending Cotton Bowl and American Athletic Conference champion Tulane. The Green Wave finished 2-10 in 2021, but rebounded to 12-2 in 2022. The bulk of that roster is coming back, so the Green Wave should be able to start out next season as the favorite to be the top-ranked Group of 5 team. Quarterback Michael Pratt returns, but there is a little bit of turnover, including Tajay Spears, who must be replaced at running back. The defense will also miss standout linebackers Nick Anderson and Dorian Williams. Oregon State checks in at number 17, and the Beavers are coming off their first season of double-digit victories since 2006. This is a team that is loaded for a potential run to the Pac-12 championship game next year. They brought in Clemson transfer DJ Uiagalelei at quarterback. Also, running back Damian Martinez returns. And Oregon State had one of the Pac-12's most improved defenses last year. So this is a team that is a veteran group on both sides of the ball, potential upgrade at quarterback, and also a program on the rise under head coach Jonathan Smith. We stay in the Pac-12 for our next team, and that is Utah. The Utes check in at number 16. This is a program that has won back-to-back Pac-12 championships, but there's a lot of uncertainty at the quarterback position. Cameron Rising was injured in the Rose Bowl. Unclear if he will declare for the NFL draft or return next season. Regardless of what happens at quarterback, Utah is in good shape around him. A lot of pieces coming back on defense. They should have one of the better offensive lines in the Pac-12. They do have to replace cornerback Clark Phillips, but this is a roster that is in good shape if the Utes can figure out the quarterback position next year. TCU was arguably the biggest surprise in college football for the 2022 season, making it all the way to the national championship game, but Coach Sonny Dykes' squad is going to have a lot to replace. The Horned Frogs could easily exceed our preseason expectations, but without quarterback Max Duggan, there's also a couple of key players considering an early jump to the NFL. The Horned Frogs will have significant turnover on both sides of the ball to address, but the good news for TCU, the Big 12 is likely to be wide open again for a team that has recruited relatively well and has also added some key pieces from the transfer portal. Texas is our early Big 12 favorite, checking in at number 14. The Longhorns bring back quarterback Quinn Ewers. Also, touted true freshman quarterback Arch Manning arrives on campus this spring. As always, roster talent is not an issue at Texas. The Longhorns have showed improvement under head coach Steve Sarkisian, going from 5-7 last year to 8-5 this year. But in order to win the Big 12, they will need Ewers or Arch Manning to continue to progress at quarterback. They will also need to find a replacement for Bijan Robinson. But given the roster talent as well as last year's improvement, the Longhorns start as our preseason favorite in the Big 12 next year. This is a bit of uncharted territory in recent years for Clemson. The Tigers are 13 in our way too early rankings for next season. The Tigers did win the ACC in 2022, but the roster is going to have some turnover. Also, offensive direction. Clemson's receivers have slipped in recent years. There's not as much talent in that room as we've seen in the past. Also, the Tigers are going to need quarterback Cade Klubnik to take a big step forward. While there are more question marks about Clemson than we've seen in recent years, I think we can count on this program to still put together a good defense next year. Running back Will Shipley is among the top playmakers in the ACC, so Clemson still has all of the pieces to make a run at the ACC and get back in the playoff mix. It will all depend on how well the receiving core, offensive line, and quarterback progress next season. Notre Dame checks in at number 12 in our way too early rankings for next season. Sam Hartman from Wake Forest transferring in gives the Fighting Irish a huge upgrade at quarterback. We also saw the strengths of this team on display in Coach Marcus Freeman's first year. There's a deep stable of running backs in place. Also, the offensive line and defense will be a strength next year. Also, two key matchups for Notre Dame take place in South Bend as Ohio State and USC visit Notre Dame next fall. The next two teams on our list come from the Pac-12 as Washington checks in at number 10 and Oregon checks in at number 11. One thing is for certain with both of these teams, you can expect a lot of points. In 2023, the Huskies bring back quarterback Michael Penix, also one of the better receiving cores in college football. The Ducks bring back quarterback Bo Nix. But for both of these teams to make a run at the college football playoff, it's going to require some improvement on defense. The pieces are there on offense. We'll see how both defenses improve this offseason, as both potentially could be top 10 teams by some people next season. Another team that will have no trouble scoring points next year, and that is Tennessee. The Volunteers check in at number 9 on our rankings. Quarterback Joe Milton had a strong performance in the Orange Bowl against Clemson. He will have to continue to improve as he looks to fill the void left behind by Hendon Hooker at quarterback. Tennessee also loses standout receivers Cedric Tillman and Jalen Hyatt, but there's enough talent there combined with Josh Heupel's wide open, explosive offense to keep this group on track. But for Tennessee to be a playoff contender next year, it will require continued improvement on defense, especially in the secondary, where the Volunteers struggled mightily against the pass this year. Penn State checks in at number 8 in our early rankings. The Nittany Lions beat Utah in the Rose Bowl. That gave the Nittany Lions 11 victories for the 4th time since 2016. This is a program that has a lot of talent coming back, including Drew Aller, who will replace Sean Clifford at quarterback. Also, the 1-2 punch of Nick Singleton and Katron Allen at running back will be among the best in college football next season. Good group of defensive players coming back as well. There's a lot to like about this Penn State team next season. They have to play at Ohio State, but they host Michigan. So 3 teams from the Big Ten on paper appear to be top 10 teams going into 2023. LSU was the biggest surprise in the SEC in 2022 as Brian Kelly's team easily exceeded preseason expectations, beat Alabama, won the SEC West. That won't be the case in 2023, as LSU should be a top 10 team next year. There's a lot to like about this team coming back next year. You have quarterback Jayden Daniels, who will be pushed by Garrett Nussmeier for the starting job. Also, one of the SEC's top receiving cores should be in place in Baton Rouge. You also have an offensive line that took its lumps this year. A group that started 2 true freshmen at the tackle spots should be much improved next year, and the LSU defense is going to be strong once again. Harold Perkins, one of the top freshmen in college football, returns at linebacker. Also, Mason Smith, who is poised to be one of the SEC's top defensive linemen, returns after missing most of this season with an ACL tear. LSU does have to play at Alabama in the game that could decide the SEC West in 2023. The team that LSU will play in the season opener for 2023 is our number 6 team, and that is Florida State. LSU and Florida State play in the season opener in Orlando. It's going to be one of the top games of the 2023 season, with both likely to be in the top 10. This is a Florida State team that has taken big time steps under Coach Mike Norvell the last couple seasons, improving from 5-7 to 10-3 this year. Next year's team returns quarterback Jordan Travis. Also, standout defensive end Jared Verse passed on the NFL draft to return to Tallahassee next season. Mike Norvell and his coaching staff have done an excellent job of identifying transfers that can bring immediate improvement to Tallahassee, and another standout recruiting class is on its way from the transfer portal. In recent years, Clemson has been the ACC favorite. I think Florida State is likely to begin 2023 as the preseason favorite over Clemson to win the ACC. The dynasty definitely isn't over at Alabama, but the Crimson Tide have some key losses to replace next season, and that's why they are number 5 in our early rankings for next season. Quarterback Bryce Young, linebacker Will Anderson are both gone. Alabama has some question marks to fill in the secondary along the offensive line. They also have to continue to get progression from the receiving core. Either Jalen Milroe or Ty Simpson will be the team's starting quarterback for 2023. Have to assume that Alabama will be just fine as the season progresses, but there are some question marks. USC nearly made the college football playoff in Coach Lincoln Riley's first year in Los Angeles, and the Trojans will be right back in the same position for 2023. Scoring points will not be a problem for the Trojans. Quarterback Caleb Williams is back to defend his Heisman Trophy. USC is loaded at receiver and at running back. There are some holes to fill along the offensive line with a couple starters leaving, but the defense will make or break USC's playoff hopes next year. This is a group that struggled in losses to Utah, as well as Tulane is also likely to have a lot of new faces through the transfer portal. With the way that USC can score points, they don't need a dominant defense, but this defense has to be a lot better next year to get over the hump and make the college football playoff. Penn State is a team on the rise, but don't be surprised if the Big Ten East and a spot in the college football playoff is on the line once again when Ohio State and Michigan meet in late November next season. The Buckeyes check in at number 3, and the Wolverines are number 2 in our way too early rankings for 2023. The Buckeyes will have to replace quarterback CJ Stroud, but receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. is back. Also, there should be optimism that Ohio State's defense continues to improve under second-year coordinator Jim Knowles. The Wolverines bring back quarterback J.J. McCarthy. Running back Donovan Edwards also returns. There's some holes to fill on defense and along the offensive line for Michigan, but with the game in Ann Arbor next year, the edge for now in the rankings goes to Michigan. Georgia takes the number 1 spot in our way too early rankings for next season. The Bulldogs have reached the college football national championship game for 2 years in a row, and there's a good chance they can make it 3 in a row next season. Stetson Bennett is gone at quarterback, but there are 3 very talented quarterbacks waiting to step up and take the starting job. Tight end Brock Bowers is the best in college football. As always, Georgia will be fine along the line of scrimmage and at running back. There's some turnover on defense, but you have to figure that Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp, Glenn Schumann, they'll find the right pieces next year. Georgia has a very favorable regular season schedule too, which allows them plenty of time to break in any new faces on both sides of the ball. That's our way too early college football top 25 rankings for 2023. Keep in mind that these rankings are going to change a lot over the next couple months with the transfer portal. There's still coaching changes, coordinator moves, NFL draft declarations still to come. So this is just our starting point as we hit the offseason and look ahead to the 2023 college football season. I'm Steven Lassen of All CFB 365. Don't forget to subscribe and also check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at All CFB 365.